Let us commit to being a presence of peace and awareness today. We send loving kindness to all points in the universe. We wish this peace for all people everywhere, with no exceptions. And we pray that our conscious awareness ripples out and touches everything, everyone, every place, and lifts them up. Take a moment to see in your mind's eye all people and circumstances that you wish to infuse with this consciousness, and feel your love and blessing overflow you and flow out to those people and those circumstances. May our meditation be a cause for celebration. And so it is. Let's chant Om and conclude. Thanks for meditating with me. Today, we move forward with the Sutras in the second book, the Sadhana Pada, which means the book on practice. And we were in Sutra 3 last time we were together. And Sutra 3 lists the 5 afflictions or obstructions to self-realization or full awakening or samadhi, and lists them as egoism, illusions, attachments, aversions, and a misunderstanding of birth and death. That's the way that I think Roy Davis puts it. The misunderstanding of birth and death. Others put it as clinging to life, or running from or avoiding death. Oh, we're all doing that, right? We're all avoiding death. But when it is a constant focus, or our behaviors reflect, like an extreme fear all the time of harm or the inevitable or sudden death, then it distracts us from living. And that's how it becomes an obstruction, is when we're so focused on how do we maintain what we have, including our life, that we forget to live. Now, Sutras 4 and 5 name ignorance and lack of self-awareness as the cause of all of the obstructions. So when we are not self-aware, or we just don't know about about mind and life, then these afflictions are easy to fall into. It's like pits that we just fall right into as we move along in life. The Buddha spoke the Four Noble Truths, which are life is suffering, is the way that it's been interpreted. There is a cause of suffering. We can know that cause, and these are the tools that will help us come to know that cause, so that we can end suffering. And they don't go that way, actually. It's life is suffering. There is a cause. We can discover that cause and end suffering. That is what I said, isn't it? Yeah, okay. By being alive as humans, suffering is inevitable. So when we hear the word suffering, I know many things come to mind. Sometimes we think of physical suffering is inevitable, emotional suffering is inevitable, mental suffering is inevitable, and it makes life sound miserable when you claim that as a truth. But what was really meant by that phrase is life as humans can be difficult. It can be challenging, and often we suffer. It doesn't mean that life is hell. But it sounds like it, doesn't it? Life is suffering. But if we understand that, like I was saying in the close of our meditation, that life has many opportunities for us to veer off course. There's many opportunities because there's so much that we have to engage our mind and body in. And it is easy to become overly identified with that, the ego that drives this life of activity. It is more common than not that people are walking around sleepwalking and unaware that they actually have choices, that they can see life as it really is, that they can be happy. You know what I mean? They just don't know it. It's just ignorance. And often when we hear ignorance, we think dumb, stupid, right? But really, it's not knowing. It's just not being aware of self and mind and life, the causes, the purposes. As we go through our practices, we're coming to know more and more the truth of what life is about and how to live it free from suffering. So, what is it that Sherry Huber says? Suffering is optional. That's what it is. Suffering is optional. Try to remember that. Because whatever happens to us that is not desirable, we can have a certain view of it. We can say, oops, I didn't enjoy that very much. Or we can say, oh my, what an opportunity to survive that. Right? You know, there's just different ways to look at life that keep you from extending suffering. So it's true. Life contains suffering. I mean, when you think about it, those of you who have had children and actually birthed a human being, you know that that process is not without suffering, right? But it is the most beautiful and most amazing thing that a human body can go through. I mean, to actually birth a human being. For me, that's a perfect example of how life can contain suffering that is actually a birthing of beauty, of a miracle. And a lot of women say, yeah, it was painful, but it's not that kind of pain. You know, like it's a joyful pain. I don't know about all that myself, but you know, it's mixed with joy and suffering at the very same time. So that really expresses this interesting paradox that life is. In the Sutras, there's a sutra that says that we mistakenly see pleasure or pain as pleasure or pleasure as pain. We get confused about things that we're attached to, thinking that they're bringing us pleasure. But once we're attached, they're actually bringing us pain, because we cannot imagine life without that thing. Or we suffer when we don't have it, right? So it's the attachment that brings us pain. But we don't really realize that we are harming ourselves when we continually seek after whatever it is. Because what results is it begins to own us. That's how I felt when I had a love for things that were not good for me. You know, and just continually sought out the pleasure that that thing gives. And then the moment we don't have it, the suffering begins. It can be mild. It can be, you know, a big deal and be something that causes us great suffering. I mean, when we think about immaturity in relationships, right? And like, think when you were young and you had your first breakup, thought you were gonna die. You know, oh my God, I can't live without so-and-so. What am I going to do? You know, it was a reflection of your own self-worth. Oh, I'm a terrible person. You know what I mean? I mean, and really emotional distress. I remember that. I don't know if any of you had anything like that in your youth, but I think most of us have had one of those. We're over it now, though, right? But by being immature and attaching so much importance to this person, it actually ended up bringing us pain. So when you read that in the sutras, or we mistake pain for pleasure, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about becoming dependent upon something, having it be our source of happiness, and then not being able to recognize that it is not what brings us happiness. Actually, nothing can bring us happiness. We can have experiences that open the happiness that's within us, but nothing actually brings us happiness. It's already there. It just needs to be awakened or opened. That is contained in 6 through 9. And when we get to sutras 8 and 9, it talks about attachment and aversion being obstacles to self-realization. So we spoke a bit about attachment. and being drawn to things or dependent upon things, situations, people. We lose our discernment when this happens. I would say confusion happens. Because, our true self knows that something's not right. That we're having a misunderstanding, right? This is why we're like, I don't understand. I don't understand. I'm going to read some from Roy Jean Davis, where he talks about the final affliction, which is avoiding or being preoccupied or confusion about birth and death. When I first started studying the Sutras with my teacher, she had said that these practices help us prepare for our death, which I sort of got. I was like, okay, yeah, so I will be wide awake when I die. Is that what you're saying? It's so... I don't know what the right word is for it, but it's amazing to be able to imagine coming to the end of your life. Let's say you're on your deathbed, and to not have fear or clinging to life, and to be able to say, okay, it's my time. I'm going to be calm. Can you imagine this? I'm going to be calm and just go to the next thing. Imagine being able to do that. This is what we want. This is what I want. I certainly never thought I'd be sitting around thinking about my death at all. This is how many of us avoid it. We just don't think about it. We, not seriously. We may think, I don't want to die. We may think, I don't want to get a disease, so let me do the right thing to keep my body healthy. All of that, of course, we do that. But to think about consciously dying, being conscious and aware of the process and prepared for the process. All right, let me read you some Roy Jean Davis. I'll start with aversion because it really flows right into it. It's really good. Aversion is dislike of and a desire to avoid that which caused or may cause discomfort or pain. It is natural to want to avoid circumstances that threaten our well-being or survival. It is not spiritually beneficial to allow erratic emotional reactions to disturb our soul peace or elicit behaviors which complicate our lives or the lives of others. Aversion responses should be appropriate to the situation. Duh! I love that. Aversion responses should be appropriate to the situation rather than allowed to be impulsively compelled by thoughts or feelings of likes and dislikes or prejudiced opinions. So I can think of several examples of things going on in our nation right now that are inappropriate responses to likes or dislikes. That is right now running amok. people have irrational fears about things and behave accordingly. So, that is like my thing with snakes. I do not like snakes. I do not want snakes. And I have some serious aversion to snakes. But this year I'm feeling a lot better than last year, because this is like rattlesnake country. This year I'm feeling a lot better than last year because I have decided that I'm not going to be afraid until I see a snake. Now, I have been afraid before I've seen a snake, thinking, oh God, please don't let me see a snake. Oh my God, please say it's not a snake. What's that, a snake? So, I've grown. I'm going to wait till I see a snake. And I'm not going to reach in between any rocks looking for one. Okay, so, that's an example. Aversion responses should be appropriate to the situation rather than allowed to be impulsively compelled by thoughts or feelings of likes or dislikes or prejudiced opinions. I don't hate snakes. I just... Okay. Sutra 9. An inherent will to live is compelling, even when it is known that physical death will eventually occur. The innate inclination of all beings is to thrive, flourish, and be continuously happy. Amen? While at the core of our being, we know we are immortal, we are also conscious of the fact that the duration of physical life is limited. We know we are more than this body, yet we know that this physical body is limited in its duration. If we could live in this material world for hundreds, thousands, or millions of years, we would eventually have to leave it when the forces of the universe are withdrawn into the primordial field of nature. When the universe ends, we gotta go too. I mean, even if we could live in these bodies for millions of years. The best way to prepare for eventual transition from the body and for whatever else we are destined to experience in the near or distant future is to nurture spiritual awareness until we are fully self and God conscious. The best way to consciously withdraw from the body when we must do so is to calmly withdraw attention and awareness from external conditions, bring our life forces up through the spinal pathway, which we'll talk about on retreat, have attention and awareness established in the higher brain or the crown chakra, listen to the Om vibration and melt into the transcendental field of pure consciousness. Recipe for our last moments. Calmly withdraw attention and awareness from external conditions. Bring our life forces up. Have attention and awareness established in the higher centers and listen to the Om and melt into transcendent field of pure consciousness. To me, to consider these practices not only as tools for living, but tools for dying, changes everything. To have this reminder that our physical body doesn't last forever, and that can also be infused with this consciousness. Helps us to not fear death. There are some practices in the Buddhist tradition of contemplating your death, which are very useful, I think, and periodically I do them. And it's not morbid, it's not like eventually going to die and, I won't be here anymore and I won't have this and I won't have that. I mean, sure you won't have those things. Sure we won't be able to skip along on the beach anymore one day. But we'll be doing what all matter does. We'll be transforming into a different form of energy. And if we can establish ourselves in our higher consciousness now, we have a really great chance of having what I would say a good death. So, this way we can talk about death and not be all sad and everything, because we have a plan, right? We have a plan. So, those are the obstructions to living fully awake and being fully aware, from ridding ourselves of ignorance, which we do every day, but not just by studying the teachings, but by studying ourselves. That's why ignorance and self-awareness go together. Why in the Sutras it says ignorance and self-awareness, lack of self-awareness is a problem. Having self-awareness illumines everything. It's like turning your inner light on and having that shine on every circumstance, every thought, and being able to see what's true, what's not true, what our motivations are, all of that. So, all right, looking forward to hearing from you this morning. Share as you are ready.